I am Brandy Sanders, CMO at Revenue.io. We'll be talking about maximizing profitability in a multi-channel world, which again, if you are playing buzzword bingo, I've just violated like 10 tenets for that. So stand by, don't worry, it gets more real. But I think it's always good to start, with a bit of a story. So if you have ever been in a room, in a new role or an existing role with a C-suite leader or your leader, or you are the leader now, and you have had someone say something and they're like, well, I think it should be that way, right? Like you have your Queen of Hearts or your proverbial king, and they are saying, it's my way or the highway, and it should be like this. And they're not looking at the data. You have kind of like that aha moment when you're like, oh no, what have I gotten into? And I think that when we focus on presentations like this, I tend to kind of strip away all of the pomp and circumstance. And as someone who was an individual contributor for many years and worked in both sales and marketing side of the org, so both sides of that blade, I get very passionate about both profitability as a leader, and then obviously the idea of real-time AI and data as a tool for augmentation versus replacement. So we'll jump right into it. I would say for this particular presentation, we're going to talk about 4 basic tenets. We're going to go through efficiency, like understanding structural adaptations, what a team should look like ideally, what's worked in my biased opinion in the past, what we see working in other organizations that are surviving and thriving in a market like this. We're going to talk about leveraging AI for enhanced productivity, not just generative, not just GPTing, a quick email on LinkedIn, like actual productivity. We're also going to talk about real-time data-driven decision-making, not just the buzzword, not just a dashboard that we go into in our BI solution, really understanding how real-time data from both a seller, buyer, and customer perspective is extraordinarily valuable. And lastly, delivering those stellar customer experiences through the amalgamation of everything on here. So we'll jump right into it. And again, team, feel free to clock me because I am a New Yorker and I'm going to talk at Mach 55. So when we go into efficiency, how easy it is for me as a CMO to talk efficiency. Gosh, I bet. Do more with less. Here's no budget. I cut your team in half. We just had layoffs. Oh, there's 55 new platforms we're investing in. Now go be more efficient. I think that the reality is that when people think of efficiency, they often get bogged down into the tactical. And for sure, there's a value there, but I love to think about it as a part of a greater holistic ecosystem for a working organization that has kind of a healthy quotient for their growth. And when we talk about efficiency in the next slide or two, it's really going to be about structural adaptations, i.e., how do you position and build your teams for optimal performance across different channels. It could be you're managing a team of SDRs, you could be a VP managing sales folks, you could be a CMO managing all of that. We just want to make sure we're talking about consistency, not hooray, one good quarter, we got it out the door and our KPIs were met and then we have no idea how to meet them again, but rather consistency. And a lot of that will come down to operations. So let's get right into it. When we discuss things like efficiency and structure, I think at the very top, and anyone who's ever had to hire, fire, delegate, reallocate, take 55 job JDs and turn it into one because the market is crazy right now. The importance of the people that you hire are mission critical. I cannot state this enough. You should be bringing in people that you trust to do a good job when you are out of the room. You should make sure that the people who are in your team are cross-functional players. Now, does that mean wear 55 hats? Sadly, folks, I think that's where we are. If you went through it, we're all in it right now. I don't think there's anyone here who just has one hat. And if you do, you need to DM me because I don't know that exists anymore. But it goes beyond wearing many hats because you can't wear all the hats and do a good job, right? You can't. There's no one person who can run the entire company. That's simply not the reality. And I think anyone who thinks that way is in a dangerous position. So when I think about cross-functional teams, it is hire the people that have a thirst for creativity and have a very diverse departmental expertise. So it doesn't just mean, hey, email person just does emails. Like teach them GPT. Make sure they understand pipeline velocity. Why are they creating the content? How is it anchored on an OKR? You need to make sure that you as a leader, whether that's a CMO, a CRO, doesn't really matter what you are. How are you explaining how they play into that bigger picture? And I think innovation is such a buzzword. I probably should have stripped it out of this thing. But when you think about actual innovation, the companies people go to and stay with, the companies who are kind of thriving in a very challenging market like this, that is in a constant state of disruption, whether that's macroeconomic or things like ChatGPT, they are all doing this. It's really about aligning those strategies, hiring that diverse team, and making sure there's like consistency with how you're managing them. And that rolls right down into clear roles and objectives. Again, there is no one person. I do not care how good you are or how long you've been doing what you're doing who can do all of the things excellently. It doesn't exist. And if you're getting that speech, look elsewhere because it's really challenging. And everyone thinks they're a marketer, so this is an easy bet to have. But I think defining precise roles and goals that are aligned with the company's OKRs. If you're sitting in a board meeting and you have a North Star metric, whether that's ARR, churn reduction, doesn't matter. You need to make sure that we're reducing that overlap and that everybody on your team, from the top to the bottom, waterfall it down, understands how what they're doing is a domino and that perspective moving upwards. So clear roles and objectives. And when I tell you to document, do I ever mean it? Like document, document, document. You need to have swim lanes. You need to make sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing and that it doesn't change every quarter. We really need to anchor on that. And lastly, leading with data, not ego, or we've always done it that way. If you did something that worked really great back in 08, so cool. If you did something that worked really great back in 2018 for go-to-market, also very cool. Is that going to work now? No, absolutely it will not. The environment has changed. The structure and the culture of your teams have changed even 6 months ago. If you had something that was, as the former speaker was talking about, working on closing deals, guess what? Now the entire C-suite shows up for a $10,000 ARR deal. So you really have to think like, do you trust the systems that you have, and are you anchored in data? Not gut check, not feel, felt, found, not it's my way or the highway. You need to trust your teams, trust the people that you've hired, and make sure that you are supporting them and resourcing them and not setting them up to fail and then wondering why at the end of the quarter the goals weren't met. It's really, really challenging to get this out of certain types of orgs, but I encourage everyone to always come to the table with data saying, here's what we're doing, here's working, what's not. And we'll kind of get into what that means on the productivity side as it is to your day-to-day. So when we think about leveraging AI for enhanced productivity, everybody and their mother will go GPT, like they will absolutely like Mariah Carey, the GPT. We all think it's like the end all be all. And of course, yes, there are wonderful things in there, but AI is not just that. When we think about automating processes, sentiment analysis, behavioral changes, training, making it better for buyers, customers, sellers, the whole 9 yards, it's much deeper and complex than that. And in this particular market, you really have to think about how can you help your team do more with less and drive profitability. Like it's going to be the end of the day, that's all the C-suite is going to care about is what are the numbers. And so we all have to be mindful of that at the IC level. And when we think about productivity, I think a very good place to start. And again, your org might not be, the former speaker also mentioned maturity, like aspects here. Not every org is going to be like, hey, raining down from the ceilings. You really have to understand how mature the org is operationally and is it resourced appropriately? Because you can throw the most beautiful tech stack at something, but if it's not operated and maintained consistently on the back end, data is only as good as it's going in. So trash in, trash out. Don't be surprised when the results aren't there. But starting with conversation intelligence, great place to start. Being able to understand, there's like this little image off to the side there. Don't worry, it's not a pitch slap. It's just me explaining the ecosystem. You need to understand collaboration tools. You cannot have 55,000 windows open. If you are a rep selling, what a miserable experience. If you are a buyer buying and you go through one person to the next and you're on hold or you're getting an SMS or an email and the right hand again doesn't know what the left hand's doing, it makes for a really miserable buying experience. And I know you're going to walk out the door and go to a competitor. So it's really about how can you use conversation intelligence, and that's going to be like real-time communications, alerts, nudges, all of that to fuel data-driven decisions that improve those workflows, whether it's rep responsivity, ramp time, call connect, whatever it is. You need to be thinking about conversation intelligence. It used to be, a nice to have. It is rapidly turning into table stakes and need to have. Same for AI-driven automation. Like these two things work in tandem with each other. And this goes beyond, I think, routine tasks. So of course, there's tons of solutions out there, different platforms and solutions that do everything from, revenue enablement to operations to marketing automation. But being able to keep a team using it and adopting it is kind of mission critical. And I think that comes down to, if you are using an automation tool, is it actually making you more productive? Or is it just another thing that we're using? And that, again, to the former speaker's point, how are you going to convince, especially as a seller, where's the value in that? Where's that ROI? That's going to be coming out of every C-suite exec's mouth. So AI-driven automation, extremely important, but it also allows you to focus on high-value activities, not just noise. You cannot and will not do more with less with a half-size team or a quarter of a team and a reduced budget and a challenging seller's market if things aren't resourced appropriately. So like understanding how to take the 55,000 things you have to do as a seller or a CX rep or even a leader and say, what are the 5 high value things that I can do right now? That is where AI and conversation intelligence come in. And of course, real-time technology is like the leg on this, right? You have to be able to understand various industries. You have to be able to analyze that data, again, in real time, not just retrospectively in a QBR at the end of the quarter. Too late. They've already left. You need to be thinking proactive, not reactive. And you can drive better immediate decision-making and operational efficiency if you are using platforms that allow you to do that. And again, I saved GPT for the bottom, and Lord help us with Sora. If you studied film, DM me, we can commiserate. But I do think that there are tons of ways to self-create, whether that is Canva, Adobe, GPT, it doesn't matter. There are evolving solutions there, but they certainly, if you've ever gotten a GPT response and you plug something in and then it's giving you something that's absolute trash, you know it's going to take time for that to be perfect. So you really do have to think, how am I using the tool? It's about augmentation, not replacement. So going into data-driven decisioning. So I feel like if you are thinking about data-driven as a buzzword, this is where you would take your red cup out and slam it, right? This is the big buzzword. For most executives, it's dashboards or views or some kind of like Looker BI tool, right? That's how they're thinking. It's like all high level. If you are at a director or manager level, it's more in the trenches. You're in Asana, you're in Trello, you're in Basecamp. You're looking at like the individual contributors. And if you go all the way down to the team level, all the way across multi-channel, whether it's the person running SMS, on the phone as a rep, doesn't matter. They all own data as well. Understanding how to use that data to go from the bottom to the top on those North Star OKRs is really what's going to be critical. And I've said it once, I'll say it again. You're going to need platforms that unify this. You cannot have conversation intelligence over here, generative email over here, follow-up dialer over here, marketing solution over here, this thing over there. It's proliferation of tools. And to the earlier points about CFOs being at the table, they're going to go consolidation, acquisition. It's already in the market. We can see it happening. Do more with less. Do we really need this, or is it a nice to have? And I think data-driven decisioning, actual decisions, have to come from a unified view, which means you've got data coming in from the sales side. You've got things coming in from customers. That could be sentiment. It could be behavioral. It could be literally any different digital touch point in the entire life cycle, all the way through renewal and churn. And like, if you are using a unified view that brings these things together, your business is going to thrive versus struggle with a market like this when you are working 10 times as hard to close something that was super easy to close 8 months ago. And when you think about the data that's going into that, it's not just, engagement or opens or clicks or ads or emails or calls or sentiment. It's bringing it all together and taking that into insightful analytics that you, as a team leader, individual contributor, or an executive, can analyze and understand how to use it to improve the state of the business, not just to look at it at a QBR. It's more than that. It's a mindset, right? You have to be looking backwards and forward at the same time. It's bidirectional. You do not want to be reactive in a market like this. It has to be building for the future. And that's goes back to slide 1 with bringing the right people in, right? You need people who are going to have a insatiable curiosity and a hunger to do this and engage data and analytics versus being afraid of it. And all of that type of analytics helps you to optimize the strategies for what you're doing to improve seller selling, make their life better. It's hard to be a seller. I don't think I've seen such a crazy market since 2008. Like, you really do need people who can get the support that they need, whether that's ramp time, enablement, training, coaching, doesn't matter. And same for customers. Reduce the friction points, constantly be there and have those feedback loops for improvement, whether it's coming from, directly from product, from Pendo, from BI tools. You need to have constant feedback loops, not just on your once a month call, not just in a QBR, not just in the board deck. We need to constantly be engaging at the right time with the right person. And the only way that you can do that is through these different types of platforms that bring in a blend of both revenue intelligence, conversation intelligence, and real time AI. And it's going to be extremely important over the course, I would say, of the next 36 months for businesses to engage in these solutions proactively so that they can thrive, not just survive. And I think lastly, rounding third here, we do all the work. We acquire, we engage, we educate, we do content, we do videos, we do social, we do white papers, case studies, testimonials, CABs, you name it. We do all this work to capture a very, very, very valuable customer. And sometimes what happens is after all of the heyday has worn off, you have a less than stellar retention. You have a less than stellar experience, both coming through the buying experience as a seller and as a buyer or a prospect. But then on the other side, as a customer, you're like, what happened to all the razzle dazzle that you gave me when I was coming across this line, right? Where did the good times go? I am now in Zendesk ticket number 587, and I'm not getting the responses I need. So in our world as leaders or as managers or directors or even as ICs, we have to think stellar customer and buyer experiences are everyone's job, just like revenue. We no longer get to go hide in the corner and like just do videos or just do this or just do calls or just smile and dial. It's like everyone's job is retention and avoiding churn. Everyone's job is how to extract maximum value from those customers, because in a market like this, much easier to get from than to do net new. And I think everyone knows that. How you do that, depending upon your organizational maturity, huge part of it, in my opinion, is going to be coming from, and not just my opinion, I feel like I should back out to that, Gardner, Forrester, et al. All of them have talked about this. And I'm sure if you're looking at waves recently, conversation AI. Like we all know that unified experience we talked about earlier, where we're talking about all the different touch points, whether you are a prospect net new visiting, coming in and giving intent signals to a marketer for the site or touching base with an SDR all the way through the RFP, and now you are one and you're going through implementation all the way through, hey, you're here, you've been here 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, you're engaging, here's the real-time updates, through, hey, we're going to renew, or are we going to renew? Conversation AI drives a massive part of this. You have to have a unified experience across all of those channels. It can't just be like the first misfit island of marketing and then the second misfit island of sales that has no idea what's going on with this one. And then CS shows up at the end like, what did sales say? What? I don't know what's happening over there. Like this has to be unified, and conversation AI and revenue intelligence are a huge part of this because they apply machine learning and AI coherence across these multiple touch points, and they put it into a way that really makes it easier to digest what is going on, what is the actual real-time state of things, not just, on the phone call or after. It's pre, live, and post-call, and really just kind of anchoring on that and being like, how do I know what's going on? And you're going to need that, I think, more than ever. The latter part of this, when we think about conversation AI and AI in general, is like a powerful platform for both, prospects, buyers, customers, sellers, etc., is compliance and privacy. So if anybody has watched the headlines recently, we have had a banner couple of months. We've had, i.e., the cookieless future is here. Good luck, marketing. You're screwed again. You can't send emails to bulk, but you have a 4,500 person newsletter. But if 3 people say it's spam because they're not there anymore, or they don't like that, or they're leaving their job, then all of a sudden your domain is blocked. And then beyond that compliance, beyond that new kind of Google update that's here in April, I believe it is now, you have GDPR. You have HIPAA if you're working in a very litigated background, or one that is extremely restrictive, like say finance, insurance, medical, etc. How you navigate global compliance, especially with international and even domestic challenges, is mission critical, because one mistake costs your company millions at the end of the day. And no one wants to be the person, the CEO is coming in the room and he's like, Twitter tech bro number 987 is now, paying a $35 million fine because XYZ leak happened, or this person didn't redact PII or something like that for billions of customers. So that conversation AI, those powerful platforms, the idea is that you want to ensure customer data is handled securely. And that is from the beginning to the end, all the way through. And trust, I feel like, should be on every slide as like a giant neon sign. Go back to slide 1. Who you hire, you better trust them. Who you're training to do the outreach, you've got to trust them. Who you're training to retain those people, you've got to trust them. Trust is implicitly the new oil, right? It used to be full authenticity, and then everyone kind of got wind of that and they're like, oh, it doesn't really work anymore. But trust is extremely mission critical. Mission critical. And when you build trust and you have a customer, you have to maintain that confidence at every step of the way regarding privacy and data security. And it's a huge point that kind of is the string that binds the entire presentation, because trust is going to be a part of everything that we're doing on each of these, whether it's efficiency, productivity, etc. And then lastly, I will say proactive support. I can't stress this enough, but what used to be, hey, we do a QBR at the end and then we try to figure out who's going to churn. Well, that's not going to work. Not when the CFO is investigating everything every month to determine whether or not you're nice to have or need to have. Or, hey, we're going to do this campaign and I think it's going to work, but I'm not really sure. Or, hey, I'm going to reach out to the 35 contacts that I have on my Smile and Dial list as a rep and then not know definitely if there's going to be a value there. Like, that proactive support is not just for AI supporting customer experience analytics, but it's making it better for sellers to sell. It's providing contextualization and behavioral and intent and sentiment through personalized communications. And in a world of massive spam and faux authenticity, that trust and that proactivity, meaning I'm not just coming to you 30 days before your renewal, homie. I'm with you from the beginning to the end. And again, I think this is a bit of a unicorn in some organizations, but that proactive approach and the trust really enhances that experience for sellers to sell. It makes it easier for buyers to buy, and then for customers to maintain and want to come back and understand that implicit ROI and value within those orgs. Like, the support needs to be a step ahead, whether it's a marketer responding to inbound, sales responding to a hot lead, or a CS responding to someone who's like, that ticket's been open for 30 days. What's happening? So I think, again, it's just a wide berth of things that came through here. But at the end of the day, when we think about those 4 pillars, when we think about the people that we're working with, when we think about the organizations that we spend 8, nay, I say 14 to 16 hours a day, depending upon your role, working with, you really have to anchor within that trust, in those real-time elements, and understand that AI has a place, and it is a tool, a very powerful tool, to provide that contextualization and those behavioral changes. And at the end of the day, whether we're a person calling to buy something for a family member, or we're experiencing something as a customer, or we have a customer coming to us, it's going to be more mission critical, I think, than ever, to kind of anchor in those tenets and serve them well every day. Thank you. That is it.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here real quick. You just covered so many like applicable points. It's a little overwhelming.
I know.
Like, you touched on like these 4 pillars. Say I'm like behind on a little bit of everything, and I'm just not feeling like the trust, or something's off. Like, where do you start? How do you tackle this? Because it's so much information and it's so quality. Like, where would be the best place to really start and dive in?
I think it's tough to say, because in a lot of ways it depends on the org. Like, at some orgs, it's very easy to have, say, candid conversations with your team. Like, if you're managing a team and you're like, we're not like really hitting it, what can we do? If you're leading that team, you could start there. But if you are, say, an executive, a VP of sales, a senior director of RevOps, you have to go above, and you have to get that buy-in from the top down. There is no faster kill switch or joy switch in an org than the effect of the top down conversation, right? Because we as marketers can shout from the heavens, like, here's what we're going to do, and we're going to make great stuff happen, and we create killer content and we push it out the door. But unless there's kind of like a culture of support and trust, it will always fail. And I think 9 out of 10 startups do. So look around. I mean, not everything is going to survive. Not all these orgs are going to be here in 36 months. And so I think at a very personal level and a professional level, people have to kind of say, what is the greater pain? Is the greater pain individual performance? Is it that we're not resourced appropriately? Is it that it is a commanding market and product is behind, and like, we have to get in front of that? At the end of the day, you can kind of sit down and look at that from a data perspective again and say, if I touch one of these, which one would, if I addressed it immediately, give me a win within the quarter? And 90% of the time, if you can say, give me this and I will give you that, and this is where that data literacy is so very paramount, because you have to be able to tell the story in a model. If you give me $1, I can give you 5, and here's the next 6 months and what I think that trajectory looks like. And I think you just have to be able to prioritize. And again, there's some orgs where you can't, because it's wild and woolly, pew pew. Like every day you wake up and some Twitter tech bro said something, and now the whole world's on fire, and we're all going to reactively go change quarter to quarter who we are and what we do. But I think that at the end of the day, if you as an individual can control your book of work, do the best that you can with what you have, and be able to show measurable impact on the things you can directly control, while making the case for, if we did this, you might see that, based on that data, it puts you in a much better position for both your personal career and then for the validity of the company.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. And it kind of like makes me think of when you were talking about like a new tech guy comes out with something new, and it kind of just
every day. Ooh, they love that 2 a.m. They love that Twitter tech bro 2 a.m. post that gets dropped in that Slack, and then all of a sudden we're all like wearing like rainbow hats. You know what I mean? Like it really just depends. Like, you know, what the culture of an organization comes from the top down. So if you see that reactivity or that level of volatility, it's somewhat difficult as an IC to control it. But what you can do is say, I will work as hard as I can on what I have with what I am resourced for. I will call out the risks every quarter and say, if you do not do this, you are at risk for that. And you can get that, imagine as a marketer from SEMrush, you could say competitively, like, here's our landscape, here's what we're looking at. X is doing Y, Y is doing A. Here's where we are. We're down here with B. There's lots of different ways to kind of validate those assumptions. And it's certainly not easy. I think if it were, everyone would be just, you know, IPOing left and right. And that's just not the case.
Yeah. Well, and what I was going to say is, like, I feel like AI felt very disruptive. So if you're an org and you're not currently using AI or have an AI strategy, is there like a platform or an area where it's a really good place to kind of like start that analysis or review?
I think that if you are in an org where the executive team is not talking about AI, you should probably activate LinkedIn Premium. And I'm not saying that to be, you know, light or contrite, but I do think that if they haven't had a whoa moment,
yes,
then they may be more legacy mindset than you realize. And I've seen plenty of startups who were what I would call progressive startups, still say, yeah, we're not going to like adopt GPT right now. We're going to do everything manually. And at the end of the day, again, it's augmentation, not replacement, in any way that we can possibly manage that. But if it can make your life easier, if it can make the work that you're doing higher quality and quicker, then there is a case at the individual level, like even something simple like GPT. Like just using a GPT. But again, that does kind of roll up to the org, i.e. is legal saying, oh my God, nobody can load, your case studies can't get loaded into GPT to build like a customer marketing GPT or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the Wild West. It's a bit of the Wild West, and you'll see orgs swing wildly on a pendulum. And I think honestly, in the next few years, AI will be what www was, right? Like, oh, we're a web company. Are you? Okay, well, everyone's an AI company. I just think the people who have been doing it, working in, you know, revenue intelligence, working in conversational AI, who have kind of this very distinct strategy that existed before everything went totally bananas and everyone, including your grandmother's, using GPT. That there's a leg up there and a runway that is still very, very valuable. And if you get with the right org, or even within your org, make the case for that, I think it could be a bonus to you both personally and professionally.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Brandy. I loved all the themes and really refocusing back on that trust, and especially the unification. I think probably many people feel like they have too many hats currently. And so finding opportunities to really do that, like cross-functional.
It is that Swiss Army mentality will get many a person through the craziness that's happening. So you don't have to be perfect at everything, but even brushing up YouTube, Coursera, edX, you name it, like take 15 minutes and get dangerous. Because I think anywhere you can bring that literacy as a proactive voice of even moderate knowledge is super important, and a bit of a protective, you know, shield for scrutiny against roles and things like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Brandy. I really appreciate your time today.
For sure. It was a pleasure being here. Thank you for having me.